I'm always interested in new things, right? But sometimes you just need to kind of like pull back and reevaluate everything. It's not my instinct at all. But sometimes forward progress isn't forward progress, right? Like, I mean, it feels like you're moving forward, but you're just kind of leaving a bunch of stuff behind. I'm trying to like get a little more hyper-focused on the things that are in front of me now and make sure that they're actually taking flight before anything else gets kind of put on the table.
Welcome to the Calgary Sessions. This is episode number 132. I'm your host, Jeff Humphreys. Before I get into it today, if you like this episode or other ones, please share it. I'm trying to get some more exposure on this podcast, so I would appreciate it. Today's guest obviously has a great name, but him and I go way, way, way back to this like obscure time. So please name and who you are.
Yeah, my name is Jeff Jamieson. I have a couple local businesses that I own with my business partner, Jesse Willis. We've got Vine Arts Wine and Spirits, Proof Cocktail Bar, Donna Mac Restaurant, and then I've got some other little things that I mess around with.
When you have time, right?
Exactly.
So you and I go back to, do you have any idea like what year that ish was?
Oh, man.
Like we literally met at a house down the street here, like fucking 7 blocks.
Like maybe 2005 or 6.
Like a long time ago.
Yeah. Or well, the cup run was in 03, 04. So yeah, it could be after that.
Yeah.
Was it before that?
I think it was before that, dude.
I moved here in 2002.
So it was right in that.
Right in that time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And were you working restaurants back then?
I was working at the Salt Lake Steakhouse downtown, which is the reason I moved here in 2002 for the Earls Group. So they opened up, it was Earls Group at that time, and then, they're all incestuous. They ended up Joey's buying it. I opened that up to get out of Regina, Saskatchewan.
Crazy. And I was working, I think I was DJing. No, I was working at the embassy.
Yeah.
Busing and BAing at the time. So fucking you and I randomly being two like bar guys.
Exactly. Well, there's lots of those around this town.
True. But yeah, man. So this is, I'm glad you said yes. Turbide was like, Turbide's been a good resource for me. He's always he's like, just come over, come for breakfast, and we'll just go through my phone and just like grab people that you want to talk to.
Yeah, exactly.
So anyways, he put your name up pretty quick. So I'm glad I was happy to I was like, yeah, it's a great idea. So
it's good.
You've seen a couple of these.
Yep.
So yeah, this will be a fun one for me. I'd love for you to go back, like take it as far back as you want to go.
Absolutely.
Where you grew up, how you grew up.
Yeah.
How your family kind of either inspired you or kind of, helped you along your way. And then we'll just kind of weave our way to fucking all the shit that you do today. Yeah. So take it back as far as you want to go.
So, born in Winnipeg, Manitoba, but raised from the age of 2 in Regina, Saskatchewan. So, which is a fantastic place to be from, for sure. It's a nice place to visit these days. And I still love it. The people that are there, they are adverse to change. So in a lot of ways. So that's nice being from Regina because you go home and a lot of it is kind of still the same, right? Yeah. So it's really comforting to be able to kind of go back home. But then when you want an adventure, you can still kind of leave it. Grew up like bounced from house to house. My dad was a pretty resourceful guy. Yeah. And he was always kind of like, we'd move into a place, fix it up, sell it. Move into a place, fix it up, sell it, grinding away all the time. So, I don't really have like a childhood home that I remember. I think I did the math once when I moved here. And I was like, man, and I was probably 24, 25 at the time. And I think I had lived in like almost 20 houses.
No way.
At the time. Yeah, like it was wild.
Was that his full-time job?
No. So he was a commercial like management guy and then like did commercial real estate and but plugged away at that sort of stuff. And a couple, I always like to say my pops took a lot of big swings. He was Sammy Sosa, and it took him a while to hit a dinger, but he finally hit a home run, later in his career, and it worked out for him. But we didn't grow up with much. I got to be honest. It was a grind for sure growing up. My mom didn't work very much, and then she ended up, when I was probably 10 or 11, she ended up working for the health district, West Canada Health District, and stayed there for many, many years. But yeah, it was a Regina kind of lifestyle, just grinding and working.
Did he, so my dad built houses for years, like so in the 80s and 70s, 80s, 90s. And he was gun shy to do the reno and flip.
Yeah.
Because there was I'm sure your dad was swinging and there's some, you catch the mark at the wrong time. And
oh yeah,
I'm sure it does
well, I mean, we were in some houses longer than others. And,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, it was, and it was, it wasn't a very solid, when you think back, I don't have a child at home, but also Regina, not the greatest housing market. You're in a house for a while, you better do the work yourself because there's not really going to be much increase in the value of the home. Although, that's changed in the last 15 years or 20 years or so. But back then it was all the value that you were getting out of the home you put into it. So
did you know the flip world you were in?
No.
Did you understand it?
No. And he will give me hell because it's I'd be like, why didn't you teach me any of this stuff? And he's like, you never asked. I watched it go down. But I also really wasn't too interested in helping out either. I don't think as a kid.
Yeah.
I was kind of bookish and also just wanted to get out of the house and just be outside as much as humanly possible. So I was rarely in the home. So I was hanging out with friends.
So what had your attention as a youngster, from K to 9, what were you into?
I liked sports a lot. I played hockey, growing up, I think just about everybody did. And I was a goaltender, so that probably didn't help it didn't help the financial situation of the family.
Yeah, dude.
Also, my height didn't help the goaltending.
But back then, it was Kelly Rudy was the same height as you.
Well, that's true. Andy Moak.
Yeah.
Well, and there's a bunch of legends. So it was, I liked that. I played music a little bit. I played trumpet growing up. I think I was always on the lookout for trying new things, and that never really changed, right? I was always, okay, well, what's next? What's next? What's next? I was pretty good at lacrosse, and I played it for quite a few years, both box and field lacrosse, and then I coached lacrosse for a while. And in fact, when I moved out to Calgary in 2002, I was looking for a men's league, and there was maybe two teams of guys that were playing box, and that was about it. And I just dropped it and said, okay, well, I guess that's the end of the old lacrosse phase. But to that, I read a lot of books. I was a pretty bookish kid. I still read a lot of books. I love reading. Unfortunately, life gets in the way a little bit these days, but vacation, I'll take a pile of books, and I gotta read books. I'm not one of these guys that can read on a screen. Drives me nuts, actually.
Who got you into books? Was that just you just picked it up early and just rolled with it?
I think I started with maybe comic books. My mom read a lot. I remember, again, not having much dough. She would have garbage bags filled with the Harlequin novels, covers ripped off.
Yeah.
I don't know where those came from, but
my grandpa had those. He was a janitor at one of the hospitals.
Yeah.
I don't know if he got them there or where he got them. Or he had access to. I don't know where he got them, but we'd go to his house and all the covers are gone.
Yeah.
Because you can't resell them, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so. From libraries or whatever.
Yeah. So
she was a big reader, and I always liked reading. I always liked fiction. I always liked getting caught in stories. And to this day, I'm starting to try and find out, what it is about those stories that I liked, right? I guess the rabbit hole just kind of continues. I still read a pile, and I try and read as much fiction as nonfiction. And actually, I'm on more of a fiction kick these days than non.
What in a year? How many books would you read?
Well, back in the day, it would be a ton. This nowadays. Well, I'm off to a good start this year. I read an entire science fiction series. So I'm off to about 6 this year.
Okay, so
But that would be that's at a fast pace for me because I haven't really picked up anything in the last couple months. But I ripped through, the Three Body Problem series.
Okay.
So that's I think they turned it into a movie on Netflix or a series. But it's a science fiction saga. Pretty long books, but really interesting. Chinese author Xizing Liu. It's incredible.
When do you find time? In today's world? Is it late? Is
Just
it late
before
night
bed.
only?
Yeah. Honestly, that's mostly it. Or if I'm on a plane,
Okay.
I'll read on a plane often, or in airports. If I know I have some waiting to do, I'll take a book for sure.
So Regina youngster.
Yep, Regina.
Pretty typical, cruising around.
Typical for Regina.
Or you up to some shit.
Yeah, typical for Regina, which everybody was up to some shit. So,
and sorry, Riders fan? Is it?
Oh, yeah.
Is it just
Pulled one out last night.
Like I know a lot of Saskies.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know. Is it like coming out of the womb? Are you like wrapped in a green?
It is. It's all we have, man.
Yeah.
It's all we have. Like, don't take it from us. And I'm worried these days with the state of the CFL. Like, I'm like, damn, like, I hope this league sticks around because literally that's all they got there. And I mean, I should say that's all they got. But, the Pats were popular growing up too, the WHL team.
It's the shining sport thing.
It is the thing, right?
Yep.
Like it's the tie that binds.
Yep.
And I mean, it's hilarious these days. Even I go to Mexico quite a bit. I like to go to Oaxaca. It's one of my favorite places on earth. And you always see some old guy in a Riders jersey and a hat on vacation. He just wants you to say, hey, and you do. And he loves it, Go Riders. He just gives you the nod. So, I mean, it was wild growing up. I did get into a lot of trouble growing up. My mother's going to watch this for sure. And she'll have better stories than I will for sure. Ones that I'm willing. She's willing to share.
Yeah, totally.
But yeah, I was, again, never home. Was always out causing some sort of trouble. And I liked doing that too. It was fun. It was a really, really fun upbringing. Lots of friends. And I mean, I know that video games were coming out kind of at that time that I in my youth.
Like Nintendo?
Well, I mean, I even had
Atari.
Yeah. I'm that old, so I'm 46. So
got you by a year, buddy.
Yeah, exactly. So, it was, but we were still geared up to go outside and get on the bikes and cause some hell. So, and that went on into high school and then my brief stint in university, which didn't last very long at the University of Regina. Yeah, exactly.
You got brothers and sisters?
I got a sister, a younger sister by 3 years.
Okay.
She lives out here in Calgary.
Oh, cool. She came out too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Saskies.
Yeah, and she's a beer rep. So that tells you.
Amazing.
Exactly. Sasky through and through.
Coming through high school, was there anything that like had your attention, or was it like...
Yeah, I thought I was going to be a journalist.
Were you working at any time?
So I would, yeah, absolutely. So I was out of my house before high school graduated. Well, in Regina, I was working pumping gas at a Esso station up in the north, and then I got a job washing dishes and bussing tables at Earl's in Regina.
No way.
When I was like 16, I think, around there. And so at that time, I think my first suite that I rented with a buddy who I was in high school with in Regina, I think we each had to pay $160 a month for this thing, right? So you could work and make enough money to live on your own. And I did that as soon as I possibly could. So,
because it was your idea? Because your parents said it?
No, it was my idea. Yeah. And I never had much of a leash as a child. I was kind of always given a wide berth and I never had a curfew. I think my parents were always very much of like as long as you're going to act responsibly and not like an idiot, then we trust you. And, I tested those boundaries once in a while, but that worked. Like I wouldn't come home at ridiculous hours, or at least I would come home. I would try not to be inebriated when I came home. Sometimes I failed.
Sorry,
but for the most part, the boundaries were respected, and for that reason, I was given more and more leash, and so I decided to move out before I graduated high school. My parents were going through a rough patch, and they ended up splitting.
Yep.
But it wasn't very a happy place to be at the house anyways. So figured, I might as well go out on my own. So before I graduated high school, I was living on my own.
And like the dual job, so 2 jobs, school.
Yeah.
Like you're busting your ass at a young age.
Yeah.
Like it was
17, like 17, 18.
Just because you had to like make it for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And I liked it. I didn't have anything, obviously, but it was the freedom. I had the freedom. I had a long series of terrible vehicles. And that was enough, right? Like, that's all I needed.
Isn't it funny though, when you think about the past and kind of, how you're limited, what you owned, where you had it. For me, I got the same thing, vehicles. It's like fucking
Yeah.
It kind of tells you kind of where you were at. And
totally. Like it was like I had a K car, which
amazing.
blew up. Yeah. A Reliant K. And then that was followed by a Sunbird, not a Sunfire. All right. Sunbird. I don't want to take any heat. And then like I had this like little Suzuki Samurai, like 4x4, like just, they all just, you know, they were one paycheck cars. Like they were all under $800, so they were going to not last long. And then honestly, in that first place, and this is the honest truth, I stayed, it was a 1-bedroom, so I lived in the living room on a futon that I would like put up every morning, turn into a couch, and then sleep in at night. But we also had another love seat that we had made out of empty beer cases. So, like, I mean, really nothing.
Like nothing.
Like nothing. But it was great. Loved it.
The pull to the restaurant, like to go start, like,
yeah,
at a young age to wheel into a restaurant. Was there a reason for that?
Oh, well, I mean, the money looked good,
booze,
and women.
Food. Yeah, okay.
And so, I mean, that was where the cute gals were working, and I had friends that were already in the restaurant working in the kitchen at the time, and they just talked about it like it was just the greatest thing on earth, right? And at that time, Earl's in Regina was the restaurant.
It was a big thing, right?
Yeah, it was absolutely. It was the big thing. And so I went down and John Fraser was the general manager.
I was just going to ask you.
Yeah. Oh, he's one of my mentors. Like that. He knew how to run a restaurant and a group of young people like extraordinarily well. I went down, I just begged him, and he told me no. Like, I think the second time I went in and begged him, and I was like, look, I'll just work for free. And he's like, well, I can't actually even do that. Like, but he's like, okay, fine. You know, like I'll hire you. Like you've bugged me enough, sort of thing. So I did have to go and bang on that door. And I loved it. I think, again, I can relate it to my parents, you know, really not having much of a leash on me. There was a structure that, especially at that time in restaurants, that was really appealing to me. Like it was like, this is a team sport to a certain degree, right? Like we're going to succeed or fail on everybody else's backs and how we show up for each other. And there's also like hard lines and hard rules. And if you pass them, and that's how he ran the restaurant. And if you pass them, then you're going to get a few warnings, but you're out because we don't have time for that because we're trying to be the best. And it really instilled kind of that like driven work ethic in me at a very young age.
Did you know, like, were you mindful enough at a young age to like pick up on what he was doing and how he's managing it?
No,
you're just like
I was just drawn to it. Like it took a lot of reflection before I realized, and I think it was, you know, it probably came late. Like it probably wasn't until I opened my own businesses that I reflected back on kind of what he was doing. But I just was drawn to it, and I didn't know why at the time. But I did like the structure, and I did like the, you know, counting on others and knowing you could count on them, and. It was a very positive experience.
So high school.
Yeah.
On your own. Yeah. Working jobs.
Yeah.
Was school a thing for you? Were you like...
I was great at school. I mean, in certain subjects, I was never a math guy. But I was also and this is what was the downfall for me in university, is I could pay attention in class. And if I was engaged and paid attention in class, I could get A's. So it came fairly easy to me. And there were certain things there's classes like math, algebra, that like, you can't just do that. You kind of have to do the work. And so I would suffer in those classes. But I loved like social sciences. I loved Christian ethics. Like I loved like historical, like I loved history. I loved all that. And I loved literature. I loved English class. And so I did well on those. Yeah.
Just naturally.
Yeah, I just paid attention. Like if you just pay attention and you're actually engaged, those types of classes, you know, you'll retain. You'll retain the information because all of the information is retained. And I like to read, so to go home and to read about these things was not a problem for me either, right? Like that wasn't homework. That was just interesting. Math, sciences, not so much. A little bit more of a pull on the sled, on those ones. Although I found in my, again, brief entrance into university that like I was quite good at logic. Like it was one of the, but logic is essentially math, but it's math with words.
Yeah.
But I was shockingly, that really appealed to me. I don't know. There's a whole bunch of, when I'm interested in something, I'm interested.
Yeah, you're like all in.
And when I'm not, I am not.
Coming out of high school, did you have a plan? And I guess, did you know, like you said it a couple times, like you didn't grow up with a lot of dough.
No.
Did you take that into consideration when you were kind of making decisions? You know, when you're coming out of high school, you're looking at like, okay, I kind of understand I got to do this by myself. Like,
yep.
I need to get to school seems like a good idea. Like,
well, I didn't have much encouragement at home to like go to university.
Yep.
It certainly wasn't a demand. Again, my parents' parenting style was like, figure it out. We're all just trying to live here. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, and I did want to go. So I was going to have to pay for it myself. So I took student loans and took a few semesters. But again, I was trying to translate that innate ability to kind of like sit there and absorb into university. And there's just so much work that's required outside of the classroom in university that like quickly that became something I recognized as it wasn't going to happen for me, right?
Did you have a plan going into university, what you wanted to do?
I wanted to be a journalist, like I believed, and I was in pre-journ at J School at University of Regina. Which is actually a pretty good journalism school.
Yep.
I believed that that was how I was going to change the world.
What were you thinking back then? Like on the journalistic side?
I liked reading.
But like, did you want to tell certain kind of stories? Did you want to do research things? Did you want to do like people things, or was it news?
I wanted to do research work. I didn't want to do like newspaper work or certainly digital journalism like is so prevalent now.
Yep.
That was not on the radar at all. But yeah, it was more of like a way to get into researching things that I was interested in because I found a lot of subjects that like I had a lot of interest in, but I still had questions about. And I figured that would be a good kind of route to take. And I'm still a massive fan of journalism. And my buddy Mark Taylor, who ran the J School at U of R for many years after that, he now lives in Tampa. Like we talk about journalism still to this day when we chat, and the state of it, which is, not so great right now. Yeah. But hopefully, I think, honestly, I shouldn't say the state of journalism is not so great right now. The state of media is not so great right now, but there's like so much hope on the horizon. Like I follow 6 or 7 people on Substack and like they're incredible writers and they're doing incredible journalism. And I follow a few different kinds of alternative media that are also doing incredible journalism, doing incredible things. So it's a period of transition, but there's still some journalists out there.
It's fascinating to hear you talk about this because it's like, fuck man, I don't know anything. So it's like, it's cool to hear what, what's going on in the background. So what happened at university? Like how quick was it before?
It was rapid. It was quick. It was
2 semesters? 2
semesters. I think it was 2 semesters.
And then
I was just like, I'm wasting my money. Like this is, I can't do this. This is a huge waste of money. And back then university was not as expensive as it is today, but it was expensive. And I was working at the time, so that was helping supplement some of those costs. But it was very clearly not the right thing. So I really liked restaurants. And at that time I was like, well, John was the manager. I'm like, I think I'm going to give this a go, or at least give it a go and learn from you while I'm trying to figure out what the heck I want to do.
You said that to him?
Yep.
And he was like receptive?
Let's go, yeah.
You must have been like a hardworking head on your shoulders.
Yeah.
Like he kind of figured that, okay, he's half serious about this.
Yeah. And then he tested it too, right? Like, so it's like, okay, well, you want to do this. You got to learn the whole restaurant. And that's how we used to do it back in the day. It's not how we do it anymore. But, so I was back in the kitchen and washing dishes again, actually. And then working my way up through the line at night and then working my way up through the prep kitchen. And and then back out front, back behind the bar, learn the bar, run the bar, be responsible for all the inventory in the bar. And then, okay, now you can serve, get out and do service. Okay. And now you can manage. And like, that was probably 2.5 years of work.
Which makes sense, right? Like
absolutely. That's what you would need to do.
That's why I find it fascinating. You say that today doesn't work that way.
It doesn't. You wish it would.
Yeah.
And like, if I was to have somebody that was like, hey, I want to like take this seriously. I want to do this. Yeah. Like me back then. And I'd be like, okay, great. We're going to start you in the dish area. And they'd be like, no, I don't want it that bad. So I don't want to do that. So it's a little bit different now.
Yeah. Do you think it's because there's more opportunities? Like they could literally walk in, if somebody came to you and said, hey, like, I think I want to do this. And you give them the scenario. Okay, let's start the dish in 2.5 years.
Yeah.
You'll have worked through the entire thing and then you'll be the person. And then, and then they go down the street because there's
tons of opportunity.
How many places? And the next person says, I'll start you behind the bar. And then, in 6 months, you can run the thing.
Yeah.
Or just whatever the opportunity is.
Well, and I mean, at that time too, it's hard for me to look back and say that I was chasing opportunity when I was probably chasing money a little bit which is what they're doing today too, right? It's just there's more available. Yeah. I mean, maybe not today, but in the economy that we're currently in. But there's more available dollars, especially like I was living in Regina.
Yeah.
So opportunities were very limited. And I knew I could make the kind of money that would make me happy in that restaurant. And so I was like, okay, well, I'll target that and then I'll work my way through it. And I did enjoy the work. So nowadays, but I actually targeted opportunity or was forced into opportunity by John Fraser and Jackie Belanger, whoever they came after. And but nowadays it's like, okay, I need these people now here in these positions. So I'm going to hire, an inexperienced person and train them and then hope that they stick around. But it's also very detrimental to having them stick around because, they've got one specific skill set and they can apply that elsewhere. Whereas if you put the time into them and you've shown them that you're committed to their development as opposed to just their pocketbook, if it's the right person, they're going to stick around.
Yeah, for sure. When you put university to bed, was it easy for you to walk away? And for me, I dropped out of Mount Royal 3 times.
Yeah.
Nice. Over like a
3 for
like, I don't know. I think it was over not a decade. It's called 8 years maybe. So like I get it, man. When it's like, when it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
No, I don't remember it being very traumatic.
You're just like, this
I'm
is
out
not
of
for
here.
me.
Like, I mean, I was basically, it freed up my days.
Yeah.
Because I was working at night, pretty much full time. And I was just like, this is more of a burden than this right now for me. And also too, I found the way my mind works, and I learned this kind of, again, reflective later in life. I could do 1-hour classes, like no problem, super engaged, like into it. And then go and switch and do another 1-hour class and do another 1-hour class. 3-hour classes or labs, forget it. I'm gone. I'm gone after an hour. Like, at least my mind's gone. If, in university, you're free to walk out. So I did often, so when I say, okay, well, I can't do this anymore. I'm going to go get beer.
Play to my strengths.
Yeah, exactly.
You said it a couple of times, just being reflective, reflective.
Yeah.
When do you think that clicked on for you that you could actually start connecting some of these dots?
Well, I didn't really explore psychology, both as like a study, so reading books, or as a practice, so seeing a psychologist, until my first divorce. So,
how old are you-ish?
I would have been 32.
Okay.
Roughly.
Yep.
And that was just extraordinarily difficult on me, right? Like, and even though it was amicable and agreed upon, and there was no war.
Yep.
It was very. It ended amicably and fairly for everyone involved, and we went our separate ways. I was like, oh, okay, this is fine. And then all of a sudden, it just like hit me like a ton of bricks, where I was like, this is having some repercussions that I did not anticipate. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so it was like, oh wow, like, I think I left the divorce probably thinking that, at best I had done nothing wrong, and at worst it was 50-50 kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then you start to reflect and you're
Mm-hmm.
like, why am I feeling like such shit here? Like, and you're like, oh yeah, well, that I could have said that differently at that time, and that differently at that time. And like, oh my God, I can't believe I ever did that.
Mm-hmm.
And and you start to form a practice of it. And I've never been great at forming practices in that regard, although I'm getting much, much better at it these days.
Yep.
Like I journal now, and I never did that before. I would mess around with writing,
Yeah.
but it would never be about me. And it might be some absolutely horrifically terrible poetry that I'll probably burn before I die, so nobody ever sees it. And it would be stuff like that, But I never like wrote about me and about what I was feeling, and I do that a lot more now. And it's a very recent, like it's like honestly this year that I've really kind of stepped into that, and it just. Your mind is, first of all, we don't have a clue how it works, and we don't have a clue how it works for us emotionally. And it just really helps. It's like sleep for me. It just reorganizes everything. It allows me to like express it in kind of an active manner. And so even if I'm just writing like what happened in that day.
Like, every day you write could be different, right?
Yep.
One day could be like this.
Could be reflective, could be future looking, could be present, could just be like literally sometimes if I'm just not feeling good, I'll just like write whatever happened in that day. It's like a diary, journal.
Yep.
And and it just kind of like calms you a little bit, helps reorganize the ideas in your mind. And I'm finding it to be a really good practice. I haven't stepped into meditation, although I think I'm probably on year 3 of making it a New Year's resolution, this is for sure I'm doing it this year.
And then everything
goes to shit. Let's do this instead. But I'll get there.
Yeah.
It's a journey.
It's interesting because I've had a couple of people through here, and I asked like a similar, and for me, it was probably around 40.
Yeah.
Ish.
Yeah. I mean, that's
like it was later, like it was kind of, it seems like you can't look back until you've reached this age. And I don't know what it is at 40 or 38 or 42, whatever the number is, but it allows you to actually pause and look back and like think about these things. But until then, it's just like, I don't know.
Yeah.
There's no need to it. No, we don't think about it. We're not being told to think. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. And I think too, with a certain type of person in particular, and I think it leans towards men a lot too, in that, those teens, late teens to early 20s, you're so just focused, like you're focused on yourself, but not in a healthy way. Do you know what I mean? Like you're the center of your universe for a little bit. And I think that there's like a little bit of control we have over that, but it's tough to take control of it. And and this happens to all kids of all genders, but you don't know what you don't know, and you think you know everything for a period of time. And for some people that goes, and for me in particular, it went a little longer than it probably should have. I probably should have been smacked in the mouth by life a little earlier before, and then at that point you're like, okay, this is serious, and I need to actually take care of all of this, or else it's going to take care of me in the end. I am a huge proponent. Like I love reflecting. I am a big reader of the Stoics. So I really like Seneca and Marcus Aurelius, and there's a copy of Marcus Aurelius Meditations by my bed. And I've given it as a gift many times to many people. And the concept of amor fati, or like love your fate or embrace your fate. I truly try and live that. I don't look back in anger. I don't look back with, of course you're going to feel remorse and guilt about decisions that you've made that have maybe negatively affected you, but I'm pretty good at moving on from those and just ensuring that like, okay, well, it was a lesson, right? And like, let's try not to make that mistake again. And you're gonna,
Yeah, maybe just the degree of that mistake just maybe dialed down.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, oh no, wait, that was the exact same mistake. The situations were different, but it was the same thing. Upon reflection.
Guess I'm still learning.
I guess I'm still learning. But having that forgiveness for yourself. And that's, I went to Catholic high school and I grew up that way. And like, it's funny, like I never, even though it was just drilled into me, forgiveness. And like, you just don't feel it.
You don't really listen to it?
You don't listen to it. You don't live it. You still feel your shitty emotions towards people who've wronged you. And like, you wish harm and
it's
those
anger.
types of things. It's anger.
Yeah.
But it's later in life where you're just like, oh, you know what? They might've been onto something there. Maybe that's why that book lasted that long.
But at the time you're like, I know more.
I know.
You're like,
yeah,
I know a better way to do
I know
this.
better.
Yeah.
You know
nothing.
Christopher Hitchens told me that this isn't real.
So when you decided to go all in on the nightlife stuff, like working, was that kind of were you all in for a long time?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I was right into it. And I worked Salt Lake Steakhouse here for, I don't know how long. Let me just do the quick math here.
Did you actually end up managing that Earl's?
So I got to night manager, and then it was very clear that the general manager at the time, Jackie Belanger, who was a wonderful mentor and a fantastic person. And I saw her not 3 months ago when I was back in Regina. She wasn't going anywhere. Yeah. She was the GM, and I made the right call. Like, I think I left to come to Calgary to try and
that was it.
Try my hand here.
That was your kind of.
That was my exit.
You came here.
Yeah, I just knew she wasn't going to be.
She wasn't leaving.
Giving up that position anytime soon, and she was probably GM for 6 years after that.
Yep.
So I made the right call.
Yep.
But I had to come out here and back in the kitchen. So
why Calgary? What was the?
So this is actually a pretty funny story. So we were going out all the time to not Waskesiu. I go to Waskesiu every year to play golf. We were going out to Shuswaps to the houseboat.
Yeah, okay. Sycamoose.
So yeah, we'd go out there and just get ripped up. And on my way back from driving out to Sycamoose, I was with buddy Kevin, and we were driving on the number one, got to Banff-ish, and the truck started making a terrible noise. Again, like paycheck trucks. So I was like, this thing ain't gonna make it. So we stopped at a repair shop in town here. It was a Friday. And they were like, it's nothing till Monday. So we'll take a look at it Monday, and then maybe you'll be out of here Tuesday. I don't even remember what the heck the problem was. But we ended up forced into staying here for a weekend. And I mean, I didn't have any money growing up. I never traveled. I went to Ottawa for Canada 125 because my uncle lived there, so I hadn't seen anything. And weekend in Calgary. And I was just like, this is it. This is the big city.
What did you find in Calgary?
Well, lots of stuff.
But did you was there bars, restaurant? What was
it? Was
what
bars,
was
it was restaurants for sure. I mean, I couldn't afford to do much of that, but it was just really kind of walking around downtown and seeing the buildings and just seeing the people. And the city was a lot more vibrant than Regina, and it just felt like there was an energy of hopefulness.
Yep.
And coming from Regina, you didn't feel that very often, right? So it was exciting. And I was like, and then I got home, and I would say within, so I kind of just made it like a mental bookmark. Okay, well, that's a place that I could go to. And then I got home, and I'd say within a week, an email came through to all the managers, basically saying that we're going to open the Salt Lake Steakhouse. It's a brand new concept for this company. It's going to be in Calgary. There's going to be one opening in Banff. If you're interested, you can feel free to apply. So I told Jackie, I was like, I want to apply for that. And I applied for the night manager position. I ended up training kitchen partners because I had kitchen experience. And at that time still, they were like, look, we need people in the kitchen. Yep. So I started in the kitchen again, worked my way up through that kitchen, and then was night manager for maybe a year, and then GM for a couple of years after that.
That was the one on Stephen Ave?
Yep.
On the corner?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you got to Calgary, was it kind of everything? Were you prepared for what?
I was so excited. I loved it. Like it felt like brand new. You know, to this day, I can chase that feeling a little bit, you know, where you're just like totally like brand new experience. You know, it feels like just energetic. You wake up every morning, you're jacked to like get out there and just do whatever the heck it is you're doing. I was loving it, and I was trying to take in as much of it as possible. I was going out to the mountains and just meeting new people.
Yep.
It was fantastic.
What was like the nightlife culture? You work in nights, so I guess you were. What did industry night look like for you?
Yeah,
where were the places?
Yeah, Night Gallery for sure. And Johnny was there doing hot dogs on Tuesdays before he opened Tubby Dog, and so we'd go to Night Gallery, we'd go to Embassy a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, I met Ryan and Vince at Bungalow, obviously. So that was a little later, but Bungalow a lot. Like I lived in the Bungalow for many years. Like it got to the point where I would get texts from the bartenders and being like, "You gonna pay your bill?" And I'm like, "Oh, from last night? I didn't. I'll come down. I'll come down." Yeah. So it was an
interesting time back then, right?
Oh, it was great.
You're in it still.
Yeah.
But back then,
well, I'm not in it.
But
I'm like, an old man now.
I know, but you have your finger on the pulse.
I do.
You have an idea of what's happening in the city and who's doing what.
Yeah.
Back then, between the gallery and I worked at the Embassy for like 8 years.
Yeah.
Gallery, Republic, Embassy, Cherry.
Oh yeah,
Bungalow.
Cherry.
You know, Pongo. Like all.
Yeah.
Was it a thing back then? Was it a unique time, or am I just like being nostalgic?
So. No, absolutely it was. And you're not being nostalgic. Like clubs aren't clubs anymore. Like, and I mean, even when we opened Proof, I had this like you got to sit down at your table. Like that was one of the rules that we had when we opened Proof, and so clubs were clubs back then. Like it was a nightclub vibe. It was a bar that you went into, and you know, and you'd go from table to table and talk to people, and like there was constant interaction amongst everybody. And I mean that still, of course, happens.
Yeah.
I think Victor did a good job with Sweet Loretta. Yeah. Like that feels feels like a club again. Like I mean, it is. But I mean, there's not much room for many more of them, right? It would appear because the beer halls and the pubs and we're back to that kind of thing, right?
Yep. Was it? Am I wrong to say that it was just like this? Maybe because I was in it.
Yeah.
It felt like you could go to like night to night. You know, you could chase like the cool night wherever it was. You know, if it was house here or hip hop here, or like lounge here.
Yeah.
You would go there and there was like this energy in the room. Like it was like like-minded people.
Yeah.
Just there for like a singular reason.
Absolutely. And it was to meet other people, right? And to like interact, which doesn't happen as much anymore. We interact over our devices.
Yeah.
So, you know, and I think also this city being this city, it was from a lot of different other places. So, and people like at that time, there was a pretty significant boom in population around that time too. We were all just looking to meet other people, right? And everybody was from everywhere. And I mean, that was always the standard, like lean-in question, where are you from? And it still is today in Calgary. It's like, where are you from? And yeah, it was definitely a unique time. It was great. And I mean, you know, you look at like everybody that you'd bump into on a regular basis back then, and we're all doing okay, man. Like we're all doing different things, but like everybody's doing okay. They're having a good time.
Which you know, can be somewhat surprising because how heavy it was back then.
It was heavy.
Like there was something cool which made you go out almost 7 days a week.
Almost 7 days a week. Well, the cup run in 0304, like, man.
Where were you working then?
So this was like a brief. So
you got here 02.
Let me just get my
You got here 02, worked at Salt Lake for a little bit, and then...
Right, so they wouldn't make me night manager. So I left, and I briefly worked with Brewster's because I grew up next to the Lanigans, literally next door to the Lanigans in Regina, Saskatchewan. So I called them up and was like, "Oh, do this." And then I was kind of a lost pup for a while, and I ended up working for Cintas, the linens company.
Yeah. Doing all the math
selling
stuff.
to restaurants, right? So I was on the sales side there. So it was a very brief stint. I don't even think I lasted a year there. But I was working there. And oh man, like good thing my manager at the time was also a Flames fan because we were not showing up.
The mornings
we were not showing up. Dude, I was out every single night. And then you'd like, because you were watching the playoffs too to boot, right? So you'd be watching other teams. So you're like, well, we might as well get together and just like keep this thing going. That was 3 months of like, and I had tickets. So I bought my season's tickets in 03-04. I saw every single one of those games in the Saddle Dome. So it was a disaster.
But like...
Worked out.
It's funny you say, because it was so heavy back then, with all the clubs and that run, and because you're just in it.
Yeah.
You're like, fuck, we're all degenerates. Like, we're all, this is like for a lot of years. And now to look back and be like, it all kind of worked out.
Maybe not for everybody.
But it's like, but it seems like, for whatever
it did, that
energy or whatever it was, that spirit, whatever it was there.
Very galvanizing for the city.
Yeah.
Like I felt like I wanted to call this place home prior. Like I moved here in 2002, but like it was home after that for sure. And I mean, that's what that type of thing will do to you, right? Yeah. Like, I mean, and this place, I mean, it is home. It's the best place in this country to live. So yeah. And I mean, for sure that hammered it home.
Dude, my memory of 04.
Memories.
Like, you were there.
Yeah, exactly.
It was the original Merc.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Merc. Like
on 17th.
I was there all the time.
The original. Yeah. And it was, I was DJing there on Wednesday nights.
Yeah.
And so in the run, in that 04 run, you'd literally walk in the front door, get like rye Cokes and they're like awesome little rocks glasses.
Oh yeah.
Walk out the front door.
Yeah.
And just stand on 17th and just drinking rye Cokes and watching just like madness. Like just.
Yeah. I during the cup run, I had a conversation with a police officer right outside the old Merc one night. And they were, for the most part, awesome. Obviously, the whole time. They were fantastic. They really actually did a great job of controlling that situation. But he was just in his car and he's like, "What's your name?" And I gave him my name for whatever reason. And he's like sitting there on the computer. He's like, "It looks like you got warrants." And I'm like, "Nah, don't try that one on me, man. I'm like, I've been around the block too much. I ain't got no warrants on nothing." Must be someone else. But I remember distinctly being right outside the, I think I was having a cigarette because I smoked 1 million cigarettes back then at that time. I don't anymore, Mom.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
What happened after 04, after your quick Cintas thing?
Yeah, so, Salt Lake called me back. They offered me the night manager position, and then I rapidly, after that, became the general manager for a few years. But then, I was still in the middle of all of what we just talked about.
Yep.
My chef at the time got cancer, unfortunately, and he beat it, which is great. But so he was out for like 6 months. And because I had kitchen experience, we didn't want to hire a new chef. So I just went back and was doing that while running the restaurant with my fantastic day manager at the time, Aaron Barry, kind of like picking up some of the slack in the front of house. And I burned myself to the ground. So I was married at the time. My wife at the time was like, "This has to stop. Like, you can't keep doing this." And I agreed. I was like, I got to find something else. Cause I was just gone, like just a zombie.
Yep.
And so I quit and I went back to school. I was going to become a surface landman.
Wow.
Yeah. So I had some buddies in the oil patch. It's like everybody kind of just, it's like a big gravity suck, right? Like you end up touching oil and gas in some way. So I took my first year of like a contracts course at Olds College.
How old are you?
So I was being like, 6, like 30.
Mid-30s?
No, early 30s. What year was that?
6?
6. So
20 years ago?
20 years
18
ago,
years ago?
20, it would have been like early 30s.
There you go.
And late 20s.
Bit of a, to get out of this environment and be like, I'm going back to school at that age.
Oh yeah, it was wild. And I ended up getting a summer student job at Taka North, which is the Abu Dhabi National Energy Corporation, just, summer student position. And then I tried my butt off while I was there, and some of the people that worked there took a liking to me, and they're like, well, listen, you're old. So you can go back to school, or we can hire you on in this contracts position, and you can just learn the trade here. We trust you. We're willing to train you, and I was very grateful for that. So I took that position, and then within a few years, worked my way up to mineral negotiator. So I was like a mineral landman. So I went from the surface side in training to more of a mineral position. And that was great. That was a really rewarding position. I mean, at the time, the oil patch was not very busy. And so, the amount of work was, when it came, it was like exciting, but there wasn't a ton. So I was getting kind of bored. I worked part-time at Bin 905, which is a wine store that still is here in town in Mission. Oh, yeah. So like just under Method Fitness. There's a plug for Cresswell's gym.
You're welcome.
Yeah, exactly. Right by St. James Corner there. Is it? Yeah. Joyce. No, the Joyce on 4th.
Yes, sir.
And so yeah, beautiful boutique wine store at that time owned by Canadian Rocky Mountain Resorts, so the O'Connor family, and very passionate people that worked in that store. And I met some of my best friends in this city at that store. So at the time, it was like a crazy crew of people. It was me, Jesse Willis, who became my business partner, Karen Coe and David Sturries, who were not dating at the time, but are currently together and own Empire Provisions and Little Empire. Brad Royale, who's the wine director for Victor over at Concord Group. And like Jeff Last and Karen Ralph and like just a bunch of other wine legends. Yeah. And it was such a great time. But I met Jesse there, and he wanted to own a wine store. He's quite a bit younger than me. And I was like, well, we can do this. We can figure this out, right? Like, I got lots of time, not much going on at the office.
Were you into wine? Like, was it
I was into wine, not like they were, though. Yeah. Like, they really welcomed me into a community. I only had I think at that time, level 1. Okay. ISG, International Sommelier Guild certificate. And like, they were all nuts about wine. So I got welcomed in. And met some, and frankly, most of my knowledge about wine came from that experience, or at least the largest, I guess, uptick in the graph was from that experience. But I met Jesse there, and he wanted to open a wine store, and we just started chatting about it. And we started something like a little consulting business that we thought, okay, well, we'll go to places like the Earls of the world, or like Earls, like the classic Jacks or whatever, and we'll just offer wine expertise, and we'll train their staff, and we'll do their wine lists. And we had some opportunities with that, but it wasn't really paying the bills. So we just said, okay, let's do this. Like, let's try and get a wine store. So we figured it out. Took a while, and then in a couple of no's, couple of doors slammed in your faces, especially with investment. Had to go find some blood money, some family, some friends. And then in 2012, we opened Vine Arts. And I stayed in oil and gas.
2012?
Yeah.
Where was it?
First Street. So that's the original location is Victoria Park. So First Street and 14th Avenue, roughly. Yeah. And so that opened in 2012.
And then you maintained the oil and gas gig? I
stayed in oil and gas, and it was out of necessity, right? Like that place to start was not able to support. It wasn't even able to support Jesse. He was working full time. We were both working full time in there. It was him, me, and I was still working my full-time job. I would come in at night and relieve him. And we had like one other employee, Aaron Prasad. Yeah, it was a grind.
Like, you're redlined again. Like,
absolutely. Like, full red line. And also at the time bought a home with my new wife and was renovating it while living in it. So anyways, divorce came, and it happens.
You were flat out.
I was flat out. And flat out for years after that.
Yeah.
I'm just getting to the point where, especially then COVID hit. So we opened up Proof in 2015 and I still stayed in oil and gas.
And Proof was and how did Proof where'd that idea
come
come
that
from?
was the landlord. We'd traveled a bunch and gone to a bunch of American cities and we traveled for food. Jesse and I, Vineyards had been successful. So that was great. It didn't pay us much, but it allowed us to travel. So we would, go on research trips and check out different cities.
Mm-hmm.
And we were starting to see a lot of American cocktail bars that were pretty impressive. And Calgary at that time had Milk Tiger, may it rest in peace because it was awesome. And it was definitely the OG cocktail bar in this town.
Mm-hmm.
But we wanted to do something a little differently. And so we had it in the back of our minds. And then the landlord actually came to us and was like, hey, listen, Corner Suite's out. And at the time, there was nobody in between those two businesses. And do you just want the whole thing for Vineyards? And we said, no, we're good with our current margins, thanks. And but we have this idea for a cocktail bar and, we'd like to maybe do that. And so I had my experience in restaurants.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had to go, I was going to stay in oil and gas because it was pretty profitable for me at the time. Mm-hmm. So we went and found managing partners. So Nathan Head, who was at Milk Tiger at the time. And then Tony Migliorese, who was at Cilantro at the time. And we kind of partnered up and opened up Proof in May of 2015.
Did you know, when you have this idea to come out, you have this concept, did you know the partnership idea? Did you understand the model of how to set it up or what?
I didn't know. No, I didn't know the partnership idea was, we kind of just freestyled that thing.
Yeah. Just like-minded people, industry people.
Yeah.
Skill
Exactly.
sets and bring it all together.
Bring it all together and figure it out, right? But we didn't. We took some advice from some mentors and talked to people that we knew. But for the most part, it was like, okay, let's just slam this thing together and see what can happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I stayed in oil and gas at that time too. And then it wasn't until we just were about to open the second Vineyards on 17th Ave. So we took over the old Megatune space from Wine Inc.
Yeah.
And we were like, I think our concept works better here. Let's give it a go. And so we opened that in 2016, at the end of the year, 2016. And then Donna Mac opened in 2017. You
and Jesse on
everything. Yeah. And I run the restaurants and Jesse's more focused on the retail side. That's kind of how it was. And now we kind of split the responsibilities a little bit differently.
Yep.
Just because my strengths are in the operational side of the business and his strengths are definitely in the creative and in the supply side of the business for sure. He's the wine genius. I am not. And so, so that was 2018. And then both of those opened slow. So there was a little bit of cinching up the buttholes of what's going on here?
How do you, I want 2 questions.
Yes.
I got 3 questions actually. No, I got a statement, 2 questions. Opening a restaurant is never a good idea.
No, it's not.
And then how do you, knowing that, all the experiences you've had, you've seen it, you've seen the burnouts, you've seen the people just lose it because there's nobody believes in this concept. So it goes under, or drugs, booze, whatever. All the things.
All that
make these things don't work. What fueled you to go down this path? Because as you're talking, you're popping up this place, you're doing this. So now you have multiple things. What was the driving force?
So, the success of the first 2 concepts was weighed heavily on it. But those 2 concepts, the first Vineyards and Proof, were extraordinarily well thought out, and they were born from our hearts. We knew exactly what it was that we wanted.
Yep.
And we got cocky. I'll shoulder it without Jesse sitting at this table. I got cocky. I can't speak for him. And was like, well, we're just going to smack dingers all over the place. This is going to be fine. First 2 things that we ever did were homers. So That was humbling for sure. The Fine Arts took a while to get off the ground. It was very expensive build, very expensive overhead.
Yep.
Rent on 17th is very expensive. And it took years to pay that debt down so that place could become profitable. Donna Mac has like never really been very profitable, right? Like it's always just kind of been like we're waiting to see what happens. Like it came out hot, but then it just stayed, right? And we've had a hard time building in that neighborhood, and it's a challenge, right?
Yep. Restaurants
are always a challenge of people, but it was also all that I knew.
Yep.
So at least I felt that way at the time. You get older and you are forced, like COVID forced us into, and it forced us to slow down, which was good. It also forced us into a bunch of like weird side project pivots that, you realize you're like, oh, you know what? I do actually know more than I think I know. And business is business if you can balance a balance sheet and a P&L. Then, you can have some success. So we came out of COVID with more of like a focused mindset kind of on the current businesses. And that's kind of where we are now, is just like focusing on what we have. I still want to grow. I still want to do new things. Like I am an ideas guy, right?
Like are you inspired by other things or other cities, or are you just like randomly having these thoughts of creative ideas?
Yeah, I'm inspired by other things. I'm inspired, like some things come into my mind that there's no original ideas, right?
Yep.
But they're influenced by, maybe chunks of other ideas that have kind of coalesced inside my mind and come up with an idea. Other markets are an interesting thing too, right? Like, I said earlier, Calgary is the best city in this country to live, but I think we're, I see a lot of people glowingly speak about Calgary on this podcast in particular, and I glowingly speak about Calgary, but I think we're foolish if we don't look at it and say like, and I believe it to be the best city in this country to work and play in. But there's opportunity out there elsewhere, and we're also in a very tenuous situation right now with where the economy's going, and if we just think something's just great and that it doesn't need to be fixed, then we're not looking hard enough at it, right? And there is things about this city that could be adjusted to make it even better, and I think there's things about this country that could be adjusted to make it even better and make it more, frankly, like inclusive and attractive to entrepreneurial endeavors. And we're seeing people, I have friends that are, they're booking their exits, right? And that hurts me to see. I don't want that. Like I want this to be, because it really is a entrepreneurial city. Like I think that we take it a little bit for granted here because we have all these connections to other entrepreneurs. Like I talk to people all day, every day that own their own businesses. It's not like that in other cities. Like people are working for the, some form of the man in other cities, right? We just opened up in Edmonton, and Edmonton's a very entrepreneurial city too. They definitely have, especially in my industry, in hospitality and retail, they have the entrepreneurial spirit in a big way. Some of it is forced because like the big boys kind of forget about Edmonton and they leave them to own their own devices, but that also presents an opportunity for Edmonton entrepreneurs, right? It's a very interesting city, and I've spent a lot of time in it in the last year because we've opened Vine Arts in Edmonton. And it's growing on me. Like the people there are, very humble, very entrepreneurial as well. So this province like has this battery of entrepreneurs that it can really, really take advantage of. But we just need the economic conditions to allow that to happen, and that would be sweet. And I know that these things go in cycles, so we're hopeful that if we set up and do everything as positively as we possibly can now, and like I tell all of my managers, I'm like, look, we're training at high altitude right now. If we can make money in this environment, when this thing turns, we're going to be golden. So
it's like hanging on. It's like
Well, yeah, you are doing a little bit of hanging on, right? Like
trusting it and like,
yeah, absolutely. And finding the efficiencies, right? Like, I mean, we have to get creative. You can't just pull the same old levers over and over again and expect there to be results on the other end, because you're getting constrained by sales. You're getting constrained by people. So labor is becoming more expensive and harder to find. And then you're getting constrained by the economic environment. So, I mean, if you weren't already driving sales before all this happened, then you're kind of on heels right now. Yeah, it's an interesting environment.
Yeah. Do you, you touched on it earlier, just about like all the things that you didn't know that you knew almost, like all the experiences you've learned, like you're like, oh, I know more than, how to pour a glass or how to make sure the ticket comes out next month. Like, more. Yeah. Has it been a recent kind of unlock of like, oh, I got something here?
Yeah. I mean, I think I will, it's conversations with other entrepreneurs too, right? Like you start to realize that you all have the same problems. It doesn't matter what sector or industry that you're in. You're going to be connecting on same root problems, same root causes of issues. You're all affected by the external that's outside of your control to some degree. And you just find that like business is business. Now, there's going to obviously be certain sectors that you're going to be stronger in because of your knowledge base. And I'm going to be stronger in, we see it in the restaurant industry, right? Somebody has a passion project, but they don't really know too much about what it takes to create great food or great cocktails, or they don't really know wines very well, and they open up a restaurant, and it's a struggle. It's a struggle for them. It's a struggle to get people in the door because people aren't connecting to it maybe necessarily. But I mean, I just had a little sidebar inside my head there, but like that goes both ways, right? Because you can be too far ahead of it. Where, like Calgary is a very down home market, and they're this is new money, and they're pretty humble about it too. Like, I mean, for the most part, right? You go and open something that is a little too heady, a little too, then they can not respond to that too, right? We still have this culture in this town of like, the beer halls being the big thing, and pubs, and that's not just this town. It's many, many towns, right? So it's a very specific thing to try and like get your market correct, right? But you look at the business side of the businesses, and you do know things like I understand how to go and seek out investment. I understand how to build a business plan. Doesn't matter what the sector is. I understand how to forecast, and I understand how to budget, and I understand what a P&L looks like and how a balance sheet works, and I understand the pieces I'm going to need to make this business run effectively. And so then you can take that and apply it to other sectors, but you better learn the sector that you're thinking about going into. But I've dabbled in a few different things. Like we have a online barwares company. So that's like been a lot of like importation, like overseas importation, and like dealing in the e-commerce space and what that looks like. And then having to hustle for wholesale versus retail, sales. And like, it's a completely different beast than what I normally do.
How do you manage that like forward progress? Like, how do you find
currently poorly?
Has it always been poor? Have you always been like, has it always been this like constant momentum of moving forward because that's how you operate? Like, is there a...
Yeah, for me, but I don't think that that's necessarily positive, always to be moving forward, right? Like, but I know that's how my mind works. But it's not always the best move, right? Like sometimes you have to like take stock and like have a look and hold off. But I'm always interested in new things, right? And but sometimes you just need to kind of like pull back and reevaluate everything, which I'm learning, right? Because it's not my instinct at all. I tend to be the like, let's move forward. But sometimes forward progress isn't forward progress, right? Like, I mean, it feels like you're moving forward, but you're just kind of leaving a bunch of stuff behind.
Yep.
So, I'm trying to like get a little more hyper focused on the things that are in front of me now.
Yep.
And make sure that they're actually like taking flight before anything else gets kind of put on the table.
Do you have an idea? Like, do you ever plan out like 5 to 10 years?
Yeah.
Do you have an idea of what this? I don't know. What do you call your like what do you call it? Like a group? Do you have any idea what the group like? What it's going to look like?
Well, I mean, we've got to pull back currently on the restaurant side of things, and we're going to do that and just like focus on what's in front of us right now.
Yep.
I think there's opportunity for something like Proof to, you could expand. I don't think it would be Proof, but you could do something like that again, and do something in that regard. On the retail side, we're in full on just like refocus, build sales in each individual location, pay off debt. And then hopefully in 5 years, we've got a sweet little business on our hands that will print cash and, see what the market thinks of it then maybe. But it's just focusing on kind of what we have in front of us right now. And like that little barware company I told you about, we're making some changes there. We're bringing in some people, and you look at it on paper and it's the most profitable thing that I do, but I also own the least amount of it, but that doesn't matter if it's hyper profitable. And we just had a problem with sales. So I just got to get sales rolling and figure out a way to kind of ramp that thing up. So we're just focusing on the things in our hands right now. And we're just going to wait this storm out and see what happens.
So interesting, man.
Is it?
Well, it's interesting just to like from the outside.
Yeah.
People might make assumptions.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean? Jeff, he's fucking up to this and doing this. And doing that, you know what I mean? And it's refreshing and also educational to actually like hear things of what's actually happening, like good and bad and even.
Yeah. And I mean, I would feel I do need to like bring up Alberta Hospitality Association because I'm really proud of it. So
perfect segue, buddy.
Great, thank you. I'm getting good at this.
Yeah, you're like a fucking professional. Want to switch seats
exactly.
here? So what is it? Because I've seen you talking about it.
Yeah, so we started it at the beginning of COVID. So at that time, we were finding there was some like-minded entrepreneurs in the city in the hospitality sector that were finding that the Restaurants Canada or the other associations that were speaking on behalf of the industry at the time, they weren't speaking with a voice that was uniquely ours. And they were speaking, and let me be clear, Restaurants Canada did a fabulous job throughout COVID at advocating for restaurants, and they have been a fantastic partner of ours. We share, information. We talk to each other. But they have their membership and we had our membership, and we felt that our membership was just had a bit of a different message about how we should be handling this thing. And so we fired it up. And
who's we?
Yeah. So, I mean, it started, I was in very early, but it was really like, I think, Ernie Sue and Leslie Aquino. And then who else was there from Bear Hill Brewing? It's going to escape me because I'm sitting with a mic in front of my
There's
face.
a group of you though. So there was, it got started and then you just kind of, people started.
And then like within Brett Ireland, bless him. And then within a couple weeks, like of them firing it up.
Yeah, I remember Ernie.
Yeah, they were like reaching out to people and they reached out to me and I was like, at that time too, there was no, like we didn't know what was going to be coming down the pipe for money or anything. Like, I mean, we just felt like there's going to be a closure in our restaurants or that's it, we're done. So I was like, well, if my restaurants are done, I better have something to do. So we started advocating for the Alberta hospitality sector and with a focus on entrepreneurial businesses. So the vast majority of our membership are 1 to 5 restaurants at the most. There's a couple larger groups in there, but I would say, and I mean, I'd have to get my executive director to give me the exact stats, but like most of them are 1 to 2 restaurant people. because that has a very different specific need than, say, a large group that can like easily pivot to digital and like, well, we'll just close these ones down. But, the entrepreneurs don't have those options, right? Like, I mean, they're in their businesses every single day. And if the doors are going to be slammed by the government, then somebody needs to advocate for those people because that's their livelihoods. So we started it, and for the first, obviously, almost 2 years, because unfortunately that's how long that lasted. We were advocating on behalf of restaurants through COVID. And then as COVID began to draw close, we were like, okay, that was a crazy 2 years, like we're all over the media and just basically trying to keep restaurants open and trying to keep entrepreneurs able to make money. Like, what are we? Like what actually are we, and what are we going to do? We sorted that out, and how we advocate for restaurants and how we train entrepreneurs and hospitality professionals. So we are now basically taking like we're focused with government. Like, we're trying to have a direct line to government as much as humanly possible. We're trying to have a direct line to our members. We're trying to offer benefits to our members that go beyond just sponsorship benefits, right? So we have some sponsors, but also like being a support for those members who, in many cases, like I spoke earlier, that might be their first foray into restaurants and things like that. So we've grown it dramatically over the last little bit, and it's doing very well. We, I think now, are representing over 400 businesses in the province, which is fantastic. And it's a great little legacy to leave. I am going to have to leave it eventually because it's too much on my plate. But anybody who's listening to this out there, I better get some water. I'm getting choked up talking about it. Anybody who's listening out there, we keep it extraordinarily inexpensive for members. So it's $99 a year. If you're a restaurant that wants to join the association, it's nothing. And that's basically just to keep the books running. All of the other money that goes to running the association comes from our sponsors.
Amazing. It's are you surprised that you had the energy or interest to kind of wander down that path, or was it?
Well, I need to start maybe having a little less energy. I am in a phase of trying to simplify a little bit here, and and I got to give my business partner Jesse Willis full credit for that. Like, he wrapped me upside the head and was like, "Yo, like, we got to focus on what's in front of us here." And I do want to do everything, and I want to be involved in exciting projects. And I'm involved in the Calgary Stampede's new project. I'm a chair on one of the new committees, but I've got to really get my priorities straight and really focus on kind of what's important. I could easily be the Jack Russell that's kind of running around trying to do everything, but it's going to be important through the next little bit to just make sure that we're, especially again, trying times, as they say. So I just have to make sure that we're focused on the business that we do is good business.
It's been really cool, man.
Yeah. Hey, it's been awesome.
Dude, I don't even know the last time I saw you.
It's been a while.
Probably a bungalow.
Yeah, exactly. Probably a bungalow. I see you online a lot, so that's good.
I'm always popping up somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
I end the show with one question. When I say Calgary, where's your head go?
Yeah, I mean, I think I alluded
touched
to
on
it.
it, but
I alluded to it a little bit earlier. I still believe that this is the best city in this country to work and play, and I think that we have a very special environment here, and that we should protect it, and that we should admit when things are going maybe in a direction that isn't beneficial for the city. We have to recognize those things, and I think it is a gem. And we should protect it as such and make sure that it continues in the future to be the hub of Canadian entrepreneurship.
Have you, I'm not done with you yet.
Okay.
The Alberta Restaurant, what's it called?
Alberta Hospitality Association.
Are you the, have you been the voice and face of it all? Have you been messaging around it? And the only reason I'm asking you is because you're very articulate.
Thank you.
With how you think about this and and you can kind of feel the realness behind it.
Yeah.
Have you like leaned into this like skill set for that association?
I have during COVID.
Yeah.
Once COVID ended, I politely asked to be put back on the shelf.
Yeah.
Exhaustion. when I'm needed, I'm happy to do it.
Cool.
But it's one of those things like I don't know. I like to work from behind the scenes. We talked about it before we started rolling. Like we're both introverts. I know we don't maybe seem like introverts, but we're both introverts, and it's not my favorite part of it.
Yeah, makes sense. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you.
Yeah, man.
It's great.
It's gonna be cool to just like watch you continue to do your thing and yeah, man, see where this thing lands.
Hopefully it's exciting. I find it kind of terribly boring, but
no, but imagine though, like imagine finding that I don't know, 22-year-old that is just getting into the industry. And probably looks at you and Jesse and whoever else you're partnered with and be like,
we've had a few of those. Bless them. Like, I mean, we've and it's been really, and we didn't touch on it. I wish we would have, but I'll touch on it now. That is one of the most rewarding things is when you see somebody that like, you know, whether you had any influence over them or not, they started under your wing and they're doing their own thing. And I love it. It's nothing better.
It's funny you say that because I saw Vic at this event at Loretta.
Yeah.
And him and I talked for, I don't know, probably half an hour.
Yeah.
And he talked about that specifically. Like, and I said to him, I kind of pushed him. I was like, dude, because of you, there's been a lot of individuals that have got to work in your establishments that have gone on to start, they're building their own little empires. Yeah. And it's like.
Absolutely.
It's.
I never worked in one of Vic's spots because I was, you know, with the Earls group or whatever, but I mean, look at and not only their own little empires outside of his group, but their own little empires within his group too, right? Like, I mean, he's got a little fiefdom there of really solid people.
For sure. But you get to see it now too, right? Like,
absolutely.
You've been around long enough where there's these, you know, like the younger version of you that's like, I have an idea. Yeah. And if they can go execute on it,
and I encourage them too. And feel free, entrepreneurs, to reach out to me. Like I'm a very encouraging voice in that regard. And if you have questions, like I'm on LinkedIn, that's my only social media. You can reach me there and find me, and I'll answer you. I promise.
Won't ghost you.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks for doing this.
Thanks.
We'll talk soon.
It was great.